Hey guys, welcome back to another Algebra 1 video. Today we're going to do kind of an extension lesson on writing equations in slope-intercept form. And I know I said this a bunch, but I really do miss seeing your faces in class. Just wanted to throw that out there. So we're going to begin by writing the equation of a line in slope-intercept form, given the slope and the y-intercept. So you're probably thinking, duh, this is so easy. Anybody could do it, right? You're not wrong. So y equals my slope, 4/5 x minus 8 because my y-intercept is 8. So now looking at part B, we've got to work a little harder to get the equation in slope-intercept form. So we know to find the slope, we've got to do change in y. So negative 16 minus 0 over the change in x. So 3 minus a negative 3. Well, this becomes 3 plus 3. So I end up with negative 16 over a positive 6. So it looks like this will reduce, right? They're both divisible by 2. So I have negative 8 over 3. So we found our slope. Now we can plug in a point. I'm just going to use this negative 3 comma 0. So when y is 0, I have 0 equals negative 8/3 times the x-coordinate, which is negative 3 plus b. Well, that's easy because those cancel. A negative times a negative is a positive. So I'm left with 8 plus b equals 0. So subtract 8 from both sides, and b equals negative 8. So now that I know my slope is negative 8/3. I know the y-intercept is negative 8. We can write our equation. Y equals negative 8/3 minus x minus 8. So here's the equation for part B. Here's the equation for part A. So part C says, what points do the graphs of both equations have in common? And what does this tell you about their graphs? Well, there's something that jumps out at me immediately. This is negative 8. This is negative 8. I know that the y-intercept is a point on the graph. It's an exact location. This tells me that both of my graphs cross the y-axis at negative 8. So what does that tell me? They both have a y-intercept of negative 8. They both cross the y-axis in the same place. They both pass through the point 0, comma, negative 8, right? At the y-intercept, my x value is 0. So again, it tells me they pass through the point 0, negative 8. They both have the same y-intercept. They cross the y-axis at the same time. All right, looking at our next problem, find the error. George and Pablo are writing an equation of the line through the points 3, negative 2, and, not add, 6, 4. Is either of them correct? Explain your reasoning. Well, it looks like they kind of work things out the same way. They both begin by finding the slope, then they both begin by finding the y-intercept, then they both wrote an equation, but they have two totally different equations. So let's see what they did here. This is the x-coordinate, this is the y-coordinate. So we know to find slope, we're going to do change in y over change in x. So it looks like this George did 3 take away 6. Did he do change in y over change in x? No, he did not. He did change in x over change in y. So right there, George made a mistake. But let's just see if he followed through and did everything else correctly. So he then found his slope to be 1/2, which is wrong. It should be, right, 2 over 1 because he's got them in the wrong place. 3 minus 6 is negative 3. Negative 2 minus 4 is negative 6. So negative 3 over negative 6 is 1/2. So he did his math correctly. He just set the problem up wrong. Then he plugged it in. He plugged in negative 2 for y and 3 for x. So that looks good. Used his slope. Looks like he did everything else correctly, didn't he? He had 3 halves. He subtracted 3 halves from both sides and got negative 3.5. So he did everything right except for he did change in x over change in y. Poor George. All that work and totally wrong answer. So let's check out Pablo. Let's see if he did it correctly. Well, he found the slope by doing negative 2 minus 4 over 3 minus 6, so that looks good, equals negative 6 over negative 3, which is a positive 2. Looking good so far. Then he plugged in the y of negative 2, plugged in a slope of 2, plugged in the x-coordinate of 3. 2 times 3 is 6. Looks like he then subtracted 6 from both sides and got negative 8. So looks to me like Mr. Pablo did A-OK. And you can always check and see. plug it in. 2 times 6 is 12. 12 take away 8 is 4. So it works for that point. 2 times 3 is 6. 6 take away 8 is -2. So we know his equation is correct. Poor George. If he only would have checked, he would have realized he'd done something wrong. All right, so in this last problem, what I would like for you to do is pause this video, and I want you to create a real world situation that fits this graph. So what you're going to do is define two quantities and describe their relationship in terms of this graph. So go ahead and pause. Okay, so one thing that's important to notice is where is my line crossing the y-axis? So it looks like I have a y-intercept of 12, right? We've got the point 0, 12. And I'm just curious, what's my slope? Down 1, 2, 3 over 1, 2, 3, 4. So down 3 over 4. Interesting. And then over here we have this point, which would be 15 comma 0. So now you could come up with a ton of different scenarios as to what this means to you. I'd love to hear about what you came up with. You can shoot me an email. So a situation that I kind of thought of, and this is, I can just tell you right now, a horrible, horrible situation to be in. But let's just say that this, I label my y-axis gallons remaining, and this is how many miles I've traveled. So it looks like I began with 12 gallons of gas in my car, right? I began with 12 gallons in my car, and I am using 3 gallons for every 4 miles I travel. Horrible situation to be in. My car is a gas guzzler. That is terrible. So for every 4 miles I travel, my car uses 3 gallons of gas. So this is gallons per mile, right? So we have -3/4 x plus 12 represents my equation. So y, or would be my equation. So my y represents how many gallons are remaining in my car, and x represents the number of miles driven. So that just is one example. You could have came up with a million different examples. I hope you came up with something good, and email me and let me know about it. That's all I have for today. Thanks, guys.